Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Fandom Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we are talking about the places, real and imagined, that the Winchesters visited in season 12 and why those might have been chosen. But before we dive into those details, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Angelique.
Hi, I'm Angelique. I'm an writer from New Zealand, and I study queerification of TV characters.
Very good. Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I've been with Supernatural since the very first episode aired, and I keep watching them.
You never watch them too often. Anna.
I'm Anna Kensing, and I am a writer and also watched the very first episode of Supernatural when it aired. Dabbled in some fan fiction for a bit, and keep watching over and over and over again.
Okay. I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, but all my modern worlds are ones where Sam and Dean could walk in and feel right at home. So, season 12, we've got a lot going on here, and we visit a lot of places. What was there any place or couple of places that really stuck out to you in terms of being interesting, or gee, we haven't seen that before, or we've seen it before but differently? Angelique.
So as I said last time, as a New Zealander, I'm not as familiar with the US geography and places. But I guess in terms of geography, the place that really stuck out to me was the town where they did Regarding Dean. Regarding Dean? Mm-hmm. Because it had such a... I mean, a lot of the episodes are in small towns, but that had the kind of Americana feel that those of us who don't live in New Zealand are often exposed to via pop culture. It had that whole... the bar with the bull and the waffle place and rushing off into the forest just on the edge of town, which is kind of how small American towns get portrayed to those of us outside of the continent. So I really liked that because it felt quite familiar and quite, oh yes, I know this place. I have no clue where it was, but I know this place. In terms of sets, the other place that I really loved, and I really shouldn't say this, but I loved the entire setting for the first two episodes, with Sam as prisoner and down in the basement and the whole thing. There was something about that was really urgent and really reminded me of the early days, you know, the whole breaking the phone when Dean gets the message and everything, and cutting constantly back to the torture that Sam's enduring. But those sets, those indoor sets, which are not quite what you mean, but they really stood out to me because there was a real, oh my God, are they going to get them? And they did that again when they were later when they were imprisoned for, you know, trying to kill the president, but that almost claustrophobic feel that you don't really get in the bunker because it's so big. You know, I thought they used those really, really well, and those are two of my favorite episodes in the season.
I think it's funny
because I like to see Sam tortured, not at all.
Well, I think it's funny that, you know, that whole scene with the British men with letters and Sam takes place in basically an abandoned farmhouse out on an abandoned farm, which is pretty common if you're driving back road in the United States. But I thought it was funny when I found out at Disney World, the Haunted Mansion in Florida is this very French looking Second Empire style building, because that's what we think of, like with especially New Orleans, as being haunted. Do you know what the Haunted Mansion looks like in Paris? It's an American farmhouse. Apparently that is
Yeah.
super creepy to Europeans. And
Yeah.
there you go.
They are the Kiwis too. Our farmhouses don't look like that.
So I just thought that was really funny to go, okay, they're a dime a dozen here, but sure. Elektra? Oh,
I just
go
want to
ahead,
say
Anna.
before Elektra gets her thing, I just wanted to also give my appreciation for the Regarding Deed episode and the scene, like at the end where Dean is riding Larry the Bull, and the sort of, the more of the bar scene and the bull riding and that whole thing. So I just wanted to.
And the heartbreaking soundtrack.
Mhm.
The Bobby Goldsboro piece that plays over that particular scene. Even my partner, who is very allergic these days to the words Dean and Winchester, will sit if he hears that, and he just says all the time that that's just so sad. The juxtaposition of that song and what's happening, it even gets him.
Mhm. And then you can play that scene over again without the sad music and appreciate it on a whole different level.
Oh yeah,
Just saying.
totally
As one
agree.
does. Elektra?
Okay, first I will add to the farmhouse bit that before that they took Sam to a vet, because whatever it is, Sam has just this thing about vets. Always with the vets. But I want to point out that in one of the things that stood out to me, because season 12 is one of my favorite seasons, and one of the things that really stands out to me is just what a great job Vancouver does standing in for Emerson, Manitoba. And just how much Canada looks like Canada in celebrating the life of Asa Fox. I just, it really worked for me. What about you guys? What do you think of that?
I never understood why any episode, but also why this particular episode is set in Canada. Mary is supposed to have been sneaking out and hunting on the DL while Dean is a baby, and she went all the way to Manitoba for a werewolf hunt. Are there no Canadian hunters who can hunt werewolves? This is like an 11+ hour drive from Lawrence to Emerson, Manitoba, right? There's no one in North Dakota or Minnesota. Emerson's like on the border of Canada and the United States, right?
In Manitoba then? Maybe when he was a kid, they didn't live there?
Maybe, because they do go to Emerson for his funeral, and they have the wake at his mother's house, right? And so, Asa Fox got into hunting because Mary rescued him from the werewolf hunt, and then his mother
when he was 6.
Yeah, so
people move.
True, and
but
we moved around a lot when I was a girl, so
we have no idea why they set that one in Canada. There's some secret reason because of one of the writers or something that we don't know, that they decided that family lived in Canada.
Yeah, that was just and I don't think it struck me as strange when I was watching it in season, but then when I was going back and looking up, the places for tonight's panel, and sort of tracking where things were, and I was like, wait, what?
I was just wondering how they all got managed across the border without getting any hassles.
Right, especially.
Some of them might be wanted, and some of them don't have passports, and.
I mean, it's on the border, right, between Canada and the United States, and it's it straddles the border between North Dakota and Minnesota. Emerson does, and so this is a land border, right? So maybe there's not really a checkpoint there, right? Maybe
places where you don't cross at a checkpoint are generally not places where you can drive across in your 67 Impala,
which is filled with weapons.
Maybe for Jeep or your pickup, but not your 67 Impala. Those aren't really designed for off-roading.
I mean, baby does see a
Maybe
lot of
they
action.
found the secret hunter's way across.
Maybe.
Or maybe
It's
they
in
brought
consolation.
baby and they took, four-wheelers.
Maybe.
If it's any
Maybe Jody
consolation,
drove.
Now,
I think
in
Dean was just
um,
confused.
Tidbit is close to Emerson. There is an abandoned border station. There is an abandoned border checkpoint.
It was taken out by werewolves.
Right?
That's it.
There we go.
Really?
That's why Asa Fox and his mother settled there, because the place was cleared of werewolves.
And probably there's some, special hunter magic that they can use on this abandoned cross point where hunters can cross the border.
Or, there's a cross point there with no booth, and they make their living by helping smugglers.
With hunters who, moonlight as border agents.
Well, I know folks who live up in northern New England near the border on some of the more rural states like New Hampshire and Canada. And at least for like their emergency medical crews, there are also many small towns that they have a reciprocity where whoever's closest has a pass to get across the border fastest if there's a big accident or they need some sort of emergency help. So maybe there's some sort of, again, on the DL with hunters where, okay, we're the closest to the werewolf outbreak. And so somebody turns a blind eye as they come across. I don't know. But I did think it was interesting finding the abandoned border station.
Yeah. Huh.
Nice to know.
There you have it.
Well, maybe we just need hunter IDs and we'll all be fine.
I think that's what the British men of letters were going for, and it didn't go over too well.
Right.
Yeah. But that is a great episode, even though I was like, Mary, WTF, you had kids at home. What were you thinking?
Seriously.
So what else? What are some of your other standouts here in terms of not just episodes, but where they were and why those might have gotten picked? What'd you find?
So another farm, another sort of like scary, creepy, weird farm is outside Mason City, Iowa in the American Nightmare episode. The Petersons farm, the ultra religious family that lives off the grid, and they have a daughter who everybody thinks is dead, but it turns out that she's not, and she's got some powers, and the family believes that she's the devil. And then, this is the one where Sam and Dean like arrive at the fence to the farm with wearing their Mr. Rogers sweaters, which is sort of the first time that they have put on these costumes for their disguises and their hunting uniform, which are just hilarious. And Dean is a little bit like, worried about getting his sweater torn as he's climbing over the fence. So,
and yet we just saw Sheriff Bo Arlen's flip over a fence in a recent episode of Big Sky. So Jensen has not lost it. That was a definite joke as Sam walks around the fence.
Right. Well, and I think it was more about like his sweater, right? Like he seemed to be very like particular about the sweater, because early in Phantom Traveler, right, in season 1, he takes his suit jacket off and he throws it over the razor wire as they're leaving the airport security area, right? And he just like uses that to, and then he kind of like pulls it down and it snags on the razor wire, and he's just like, whatever. Also, this is in the pre-fed suit, or this is in the one of the first times they're wearing like the fed suits, and they're not as nice as they end up later in the show. They're not like Tom Ford, right? They're like
Goodwill fed suit. Yeah,
that's Goodwill fed suits, right? Exactly. So by season 12, Dean is a little bit more like, I don't want to, pill my sweater here. I don't want to snag a thread.
He was nesting by then. They now had a home and he was nesting.
Yeah, right. He was nesting and he was paying more attention to, comfort things like cozy sweaters and his dead guy robe and those leather slippers. And
Okay. Elektra?
Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado,
Mhm.
where apparently there's a black site we didn't know about, where they just disappeared in First Blood.
Well,
And that-
it is 6 miles from the Overlook Hotel, so, things happen there.
Right.
Apparently that's a very spooky place, just in general in Colorado. But that's just, I mean, that forest clearly is someplace in Canada, but I was willing to buy it was Colorado.
Oh,
You
yeah.
could have told me it was Montana. You could have told me it was Wyoming. I would have bought it. You could have told me it was Maine. I would have bought that too. But Colorado worked.
Well, there
And
are
that black
several
site's-
ghosts. Oh, go ahead.
And that black site's not there anymore, right? Because Ketch took care of everything.
Well,
Took
took
care of-
care of everybody. But
Everybody.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he left the building.
Well, perhaps.
Yeah, that
You know-
that whole plot thread of them leaving people behind because they were just doing their jobs, and Ketch going around after them and murdering these people quietly was just something they didn't find out for quite a while. Was just one of several really cool threads that ran through this. One was that thread. One was the Mary being recruited and not telling them. One was the whole British men of letters want to take us over, and if they can't take us over and recruit us, they want to kill us all. There were, and one is, Lucifer wants to find himself a really, really good vessel, and if he can't do that, well, he just wants to make a kid.
Yeah.
There were
Now-
all those good threads, and in between that, they managed to do all those standalone episodes that were so awesome, like the one with God, what was her name? The girl with the powers.
Magda?
Yeah, Magda. I mean, that was just one of many good standalone episodes.
Now, there are several ghost towns and ruins near the Rocky Mountain State Park, in addition to being so close to the hotel that inspired Stephen King's Hotel on the Shining. So I'm taking it off my bucket list. I mean, just to be careful.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Good.
think we should totally do a writing retreat up there
No,
at the
thank you.
Overlook. I mean, I guess
What could-
everybody has their own thing.
I was
I'll just pass on
intrigued.
any parties.
I was intrigued with the whole with Fall River in and the Sagamore Hills area in Mamma Mia. And one of the things that I found, there were a number of historic theaters and mansions and the usual haunted houses, but there was a railroad car that is on display that was called the Death Car because somehow 26 people got boiled to death in it. It's on display. I didn't really get the details about how that happened. There's a lighthouse with a ghost cat. There are catacombs under the Soldier and Sailor Memorial, but there's also an abandoned town that is in ruins that the locals call Helltown, that people dumped toxic waste in, and the locals talk about mutant creatures and say that if you walk through what's left of the town, a hearse follows you, and there is a road to nowhere with vanishing headlights.
This is all
And
in
I
Fall
thought that's
River?
just, yeah,
Sure, I've seen those movies. I know
Yeah.
I've seen the one about the hearse, and I know I've seen the one about the animals. It's two different movies. So,
and apparently,
those legends are all like movies from the 80s.
yeah, and apparently there was a place that was a speakeasy, but then it was also a Nazi sympathizer bunker, and it had tunnels, and there was a massacre.
Are
Except
you
nobody
sure
can
that
find.
the Nazi sympathizer bunker isn't in Columbus?
But it is in Columbus too, which is why actually it was Cleveland had a fairly large Nazi movement in 1930, 1945, which was close enough to Columbus that I figured that's why they put the Hitler episode there.
That's why I was asking. I mean, we did have the Hitler episode.
We did. We did. We spent, I mean, the show spends a fair bit of time in Fall River, you know, sort of like spanning the seasons, because Crowley's lair is in Fall River at the, you know, the old asylum. So, you know, we have the Lizzie Borden episode from the previous season. So Fall River is just a location ripe for supernatural settings.
It's a relatively easy place to get to if you're heading into Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, we point out how far Massachusetts is from Lebanon, Kansas.
Yes. Yes.
And
I'm glad.
And it's much less recognizable than Boston.
True.
This is true.
Boston is very recognizable, so.
Yeah. You have to pick cities that don't have a noticeable skyline where things pretty much just all look alike, and then you can sub in for them. But yeah, Boston, if you know, that's Boston.
Fall River's a big town. It's not a city, so yeah.
Angelique, what else occurred to you? What's stuck out to you?
So I was just watching the season again recently, and I'm trying to think, and of course my brain's just gone, what now? Because it's been trained to just pay attention to Dean for the past 2 years. I was going to say the Hitler episode was obviously a standout. With, you know, got to feel for poor old Sam though, who's going to be hearing that for eternity. You realise it's probably the second thing Dean said to him when he got up there. Hey Sammy, I killed Hitler. The other 2 episodes that I do really like are the final 2. Not so much around the setting, although I think they used them really, really well. But around the whole, Elektra, you talked about the threads that were running through, and one of the ones that I like is seeing Sam step up really quietly into this leadership role, and you just see it really subtly happening. And you know, when it gets to that point at the end, and Dean says, yeah, you can do this. And you can see Sam go, oh, no, I can't. And it's quite effective, because you look at this guy who's so huge, and you're thinking, well, yeah, why isn't he reading anyway? Because he's a marshmallow. I thought they used a lot of the closed sets in this season really, really well. Again, partly because I don't know the geography as well as you do, but often they get a lot more power when in their exterior sets, when they're fighting, you know, the monsters and things, because those monsters call on those exterior settings. But there's something about the claustrophobic feel in the sets in season 12, about the everything's really urgent and everything's really tight and everything's closed. You know, they're trying to keep British men letters at bay. They're not sure what's happening with Mary. They can't afford anybody to be listening in, so that you get that whole feeling of everything's secretive and desperate. And I felt that at the end they called back to those first 2 episodes where they were prisoners, and they're almost back at that point again of being locked in and being kind of tortured by this invasion of British who are saying, we're better than you. And what do they stand for? And they're not just standing to protect themselves. You know, I mean, we know the Winchesters. It's about protecting all the other hunters. It's protecting all of the people out in the, you know, all the innocence, but it's also protecting what they've come to know as, not all monsters are monsters. So there's Garth and there's Benny and all those types of beings they've encountered and learned that aren't. And I really felt that this season they used their sets to bring that feeling of danger, that they were protecting more than just, hey, we're going to go and kill the monster this week. And you're right, the standalone Monster of the Week episodes were really good. But that plot that ran through about, well, we're actually protecting more than that, I felt was made really, really powerful by those indoor settings. And particularly the bookends of the first two and the final two. But
Okay.
even with the Hitler episode, a lot of that takes place enclosed. And the guy who plays Hitler just made my skin crawl. He just absolutely made my skin crawl. I thought he was fabulous.
It was interesting that they chose to take it in a crazy comedic turn than a crazy intimidating turn, because I thought that was a very interesting choice, because it's Hitler, where he could have been serious and still just as crazy, but terrifying, as opposed to kind of hopped up on too much sugar and caffeine and weird.
Well, it's been done so many times.
Yeah.
And they took it away. Nobody's done it, I don't think.
Well, it's shades of South Park with Saddam Hussein, and the like a cartoonish version of Saddam Hussein, and he's like, and Satan is in love with him, and the whole like irreverent sort of, skewering of a really, really terrible character. Like it felt a lot like that to me.
It denied him the gravitas and made him foom, which is also acceptable. Well, I'd seen
the Pet Cemetery aspect to it. Do you really think everybody's going to be just fine when you bring them back that way?
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned the, I Shot Hitler t-shirt. I saw a cartoon where Dean was wearing his I Shot Hitler t-shirt and Sam's wearing his I Shot Goth t-shirt.
Nice.
I mean, why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I wanted to mention about Eureka Springs, which is where the Regarding Dean episode is, there's a Eureka Springs Crescent Hotel, which is super haunted. And it has, the same building has been a hotel, a hospital. It has a morgue and an autopsy room. There were hot springs, and in the 1800s, they did a lot of kind of fraudulent medical stuff with the hot springs and snake oil medicine. So if you ever stay at the Eureka Springs Crescent Hotel, just know that they are equipped with a full service morgue and autopsy room in case you need it.
Okay.
Lock your door at night.
Noted.
Something I wanted to make sure we mentioned about that final episode, and several of the other episodes, the house where Castiel and Kelly stay, and where Jack is born in the last episode. I'm pretty sure that house is the same house where, Alan Tudyk lives in the TV show he's doing, where he is an alien for the Sci-Fi Channel.
Okay.
And the name of it just zipped right out of my head. It's something alien. Boy, that's embarrassing. Yes.
That happens.
He lives in that same cabin. Resident alien.
Oh, yeah.
And he is in that same cabin on that same point of off the lake or body of water, whatever it is, masquerading as another place.
There's a lot of filming in the Vancouver area, so
right. I think it's masquerading as part of Colorado there. but that's a very distinct location
Mhm.
on the water.
Yeah, I love it when you spot a location or anything in a new episode that makes you go, wait, that's supernatural. We were watching an episode of Wednesday, and I'm listening to the soundtrack, and I'm thinking, wait, I know this song, and it's a supernatural song. What the heck is it? And then I look at my husband and go, wait, that's Metallica. That's in Nothing Else Matters. And he's giving me this look like, I've known you since we were 17, and you were never a Metallica fan before.
No,
What
the
can I
only
say?
thing worse than that is when you're watching one of those Hallmark Christmas movies and you know you've seen the lead actor before and you can't figure it out and you can't figure it out and you finally Google him and it's Ketch. Only he's clean shaven,
Yes.
like wearing a Christmas sweater. And
That
he
happened
doesn't
to me
have a
last
British
night.
accent.
He
That
doesn't
happened
have
to me
a
last night
cross
with,
tattoo in his hand.
No tattoos, no facial hair.
And everybody lived through the Hallmark movie?
And everybody lives through the movie happily ever after. Not even the pets are murdered. It's
This is the
really not creepy. It's just sort of odd.
yeah.
But
we
without
picked,
the British accent, it's really hard to spot him. I'm so used to him having that accent.
Well,
we
and
picked
he
Modern
probably said-
Family on last night, and he was in it. And I did this huge double take. I went, wait, no, yes, no, and I had to look it up, and yes.
Well, I saw him and Adam Fergus, who played Mick, at a convention. Now, Adam really is Irish from Ireland. He, like Ruth, her accent is authentic. Adam's accent is authentic. David Hayden Jones was from Saskatchewan. His natural accent sounds a lot more like Donna, don't you know? Because he's definitely got that upper Midwest Canadian Plains, very identifiable accent, and but he's good at turning it on and off. One of the other locations that I thought was interesting was in Lotus, which is in Indianapolis. I looked up the haunted places, and just because Dean would have done so much with the name of this place, there is a haunted hotel / bar / it's been everything, called the Slippery Noodle Inn. It is one of the, Dean would have had.
Oh, come
Oh,
on.
yeah.
He would have been trying to sneak his car out on the racetrack.
Or Sam going, we're having dinner at the Slippery Noodle. The Slippery what, Sam? The Slippery Noodle. The what, Sam? Dean.
Yeah.
But it is one of the oldest operating bars in Indiana, and it functioned as a stop on the Underground Railroad. So there you have it. Now you know.
So we spend so we have a case in St. Paul in the Foundry, right? And so the motel room that the Winchesters stay in is called the Royal Funk, and it's purple. And there's a symbol in the motel room partition, which looks, a fair bit like the merged gender symbols. And so it really is like an homage to Prince, this whole motel decor and setup. And and Prince had died in 2016. So this was a deliberate homage to Prince, I think.
Oh, I love when they do things like that. And especially when you don't realize it until like years later and you're going, did anybody pick up on this at the time, or am I just late to the party? What else? What stuck out to you, or what trivia did you find, or what locations just made themselves interesting? Did you realize that in this season, every member of Team Free Will has killed a Prince of Hell, and every member of Team Free Will has died and come back?
Yes, indeed.
That.
So we go to LA, right? Briefly, in Rock Never Dies, and it's so sunny, and the lighting is so like bright. And they really, the lighting directors, I think really did like change the lighting of the filming in order to make it sort of seem like, and the boys look a little bit.
Apparently they don't know about the smog.
Well, yeah, apparently they don't know about the smog. But the boys,
It was a
were
very
like,
good air
pale
day.
and kind of washed out, and so I think that there's that they really did come off the usual lighting plan for the episode that was set in Los Angeles to kind of emphasize the difference between the usual Midwestern ghost hunts and being
Overcast.
in this place, overcast, and being in this place where the boys are really fish out of water.
Persistently overcast, yes. Yeah, I mean, one of the other standouts about that episode is the guys in their leather jackets for the concert. And then Sam effing Winchester holding the doors open so everybody can get out against the power of Lucifer. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was. And I feel I just have to say, I was 14 when Jesse's Girl came out. So my 14-year-old self went, oh my God, it's Rick Springfield, and did a little, and then my daughter was sitting there going, I don't know you. Never seen you before in my life. Please go away and never do that again. I said, you're just, a heathen. And she was sitting there going, he's a horrible Satan. I don't care. He's Rick Springfield. Just leave him alone.
There was the year that this season came out, we were at Epcot, which is part of Magic Kingdom, and they do a concert series there with a lot of nostalgia bands. And there's a whole list of who was coming, and one of them was Rick Springfield. And I'm like, oh my God, Lucifer's coming to Epcot.
It doesn't go over well at Disney.
They have plenty of dark magic in those movies.
There's a jail there. Be careful what you say.
There is. I know somebody who's been there. What else?
Okay, someplace we shouldn't forget to mention is Apocalypse World, because they make a brief visit there at the very end.
That's true. I don't really know what we're going to do for season 13 road trip because it's mostly Apocalypse World.
Well, when I said that, all three members of Team Free Will died, Sam and Dean died in the episode where they're getting out of the Black Ops site briefly and came back. And then Cass dies in the end of season 12, getting pulled into, getting stabbed through the rift. So yeah, that's true. In season 13, we spent a lot of time in a place that isn't there.
But it's an interesting place, and we meet interesting people.
Might be a short panel, is all I'm saying.
And we kill them. No, sorry, we try to kill them.
Yes.
And some people don't.
I thought they did an
interesting. World is fantastic. How can you not want to talk about it? Sorry, that's another panel. We can talk about it next time.
We can talk about it next time. But I think it's interesting, some of the design choices they made to make it so unrecognizable, except for things like the shards or the steeples or whatever those are sticking out of the rubble. So we can save that for next time. But yeah,
save that. But it was an interesting place to go, and we will talk about it when we talk about next season. It left us hungry for season 13 when we got that little taste.
Yes,
we went to Wyoming to visit a really nasty witch, and Twigs and Twines and Tasha Bain. And we always spent some time with the twins.
I always wanted to see the twins come back because that was such a Sam and Dean thing to do. Of all the ways Dean saved Sam, at least he didn't turn him into Wicker Man.
True enough.
We go to Orono, Maine, which is
with Lily.
Yeah, Lily Sunder has some regrets. Oh, boy, does she. And so we don't actually go there. Like, the boys don't actually go there. We just
we get to see the cast.
We get to see
when Cass was a woman.
Yes. So we get to see Orono, Maine in 1901. And so it's just sort of, it's not up the road for me because I live, Maine is gigantic, and I live on the coast, or at least part-time, I live on the coast. But every time I go into Bangor or to the airport, then I see signs for Ordo, and it's where the University of Maine is. So like it's a real place.
Well, in Family Feud, they're briefly in Des Moines, Iowa. And I thought it was interesting that Des Moines has a mall that was built on the remains of a monastery. Big surprise, the mall is haunted. There's also a haunted Catholic high school that has glowing purple orbs, and an observatory that is haunted because the chairman who got the funding for the observatory, when he died, he and his wife's ashes were placed in the walls of the observatory. What could possibly go wrong?
Whoa, and this is in Maine?
Des Moines.
This is because I've been to the observatory in Pittsburgh where there are people interred in the basement, and I've seen the little niches where their ashes are. That's apparently a thing. Apparently when you pay for the observatory, you get your ashes interred.
Huh.
Apparently that's a thing you do down in the basement.
Wow.
Who knew?
I have been to the observatory in Pittsburgh, and I did not know that it was on top of dead people.
They're in the basement in little niche. You have to know the right people so you get the super tour.
Okay. I did not obviously know the right people.
It was part of the Nebs. We got the super tour at the Nebulas. A whole group of us came. We got to see it being moved and everything. It was a really good tour.
I did not know the cool kids, so there you go.
I can hook you up next time you want to go up there. I know people. You can go see the dead people in the basement. We can claim, if it's not haunted, we can write that story.
Well, I used to go up all the time because my family's from there and I used to live there, but that is a cool story. By the way, in
next time we're in town, we can do that.
We should do that. In episode 15, with the Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell, they make a pit stop in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and there is a fish woman that is a monster in Coeur d'Alene. That's somehow very fitting for Idaho. I don't know. It just sort of makes sense. They'd have a fish woman.
Of course they would.
But of course they would. What else have we missed?
Andover, Massachusetts, the Maritime Museum, which holds the items from the Star, the brigantine ship that sailed from Scotland with Gavin aboard and sunk off the coast of New England in 1723. And so Gavin's Crowley's son, right? And so also apparently Gavin's the girl that, she ends up haunting the Andover. She ends up killing somebody in Andover and somebody in other towns. I think also in Des Moines, right? Because the museum lends some artifacts from the ship around to different places, and so she just gets passed around and commits lots and lots of murders. And so then they send Gavin back to Scotland in order to convince her to convince Gavin not to leave her and abandon her, because some terrible things happened to her after her lover abandoned her, and very, very sad story. But yeah, so Crowley's son gets resurrected and then sent back, and Rowena and Crowley have a little bit of a reconciliation, because they both have lost, children, or she sort of reconciles a bit with him and acknowledges that
they need
was
to
her child
with Lucifer.
Yes,
is what they reconcile over.
Yeah,
they found the bigger bad.
Yeah, but she does finally in this episode acknowledge that she cared about him as a son and not just as a burden, and not just as a terrible, useless burden that she had been spending the previous seasons complaining about him about.
So you worth 3 pigs.
Right, right, exactly.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, in episode 18, Memory Remains, they stop through Tomahawk, Wisconsin, which has a haunted supper club and tunnels from bootleggers. And the town also has a hospital and a haunted cemetery. So for being a small place, it's got a lot of stuff.
Are there cemeteries that aren't haunted? I mean, surely there
That
are.
was my
but-
question.
Well, except maybe
It
if you're
sounds
under-
redundant, that's all. Haunted cemetery. It just sounds a little redundant.
That's right. That's right. You have a very pretty kitty there, Angelique. Anything else as we wrap up that you want to mention about season 12?
We should mention
wait.
we got a few bits that were set in London, the real
Mhm.
London, that gave us some background on the British men of letters
That's true.
that were fun and interesting and really, really creepy. That showed us just how bad the men of letters were and the weird stuff they put them through. The
Yeah.
whole
and kind of-
two children enter, one child leaves thing. That
Yeah,
was just disturbing as hell.
Yeah. Murder Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes, they gave us the first inkling of Murder Hogwarts there,
Mhm.
so that we understood why these people were just bad.
Yeah.
And the whole that they had England warded so tight that they didn't have any monsters, so they just didn't understand what it was like to chase them.
Well, not to mention that, you could fit all of England in about 3 states. We do cover a lot more territory.
Right.
You know.
I just
What do you
don't
mean
believe
3 states?
that.
It's the size of New Jersey.
She's being generous. Yes. Yeah, and I don't believe them. I don't believe that the men of letters have cleared England or the British Isles of all monsters. Like, come on. Like, no. Have you been there? Like, Ireland's still got plenty of monsters, let me tell you. And, the Republic, maybe that's the thing, right? The British men of letters don't cover the Republic of Ireland, and so maybe that's it. But I don't know. I just don't believe that the British men of letters have been that successful.
And you get out there in the Scottish countryside, in the Highlands. I'm
Right.
sorry, there are pixies.
I'm not going anywhere without my rock salt.
Yes.
Mhm.
Just saying, I'm equipped.
Right.
I got a good
Who's your
solid.
Who's your friend, Angelique?
this is Monet, and he's just being a brat because I was out all morning.
Well, it makes it an official Zoom call. So you have to have.
Yeah.
So last call, folks, before we wrap up, anything you haven't gotten to say yet, and we're looking forward to Apocalypse World for season 13.
Oh, and the very important thing here is that we watched a Reaper get killed in this season. And that
Mhm.
starts the whole, now we find out what happens when you kill death series.
Yeah.
All those cosmic consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, folks, thank you so much for being here tonight. Can't wait to talk about season 13. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. Wait, before we go out, we have to let everybody know where to find you. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Anna, let us know where we can find you online. And if you have a new book coming out, mention that too, please.
Yes, you can find me at annakensing.com and on all the social media, including Anna Kensing Books on TikTok. And I have a new book coming out today.
Congratulations.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
What is it?
It's called His Dad Will Do. It's a age gap, revenge banging, cheating ex-boyfriend's dad. It's very
Okay.
dirty.
A
Very
lot
dirty.
going on. Elektra?
Elektra Hammond, you can find me at untilmidnight.com, and I'm Elektra at Wandering Shop on Mastodon.
Very good. Angelique?
You can find me at angeliquejurd.com and on all the usual social media spots.
And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. I'm on all the social media under those names. So if you spell them right, you'll find me. I write for the Winchester Family Business Blog. I run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook, but most of the time you can find me here on Continual. Now I can thank everybody for being here tonight and being such wonderful panelists and for watching and listening. You know there'll be more Supernatural coming up on Continual, so we'll see you online.